Now, South Africa has been pitching to international investors at a two-day conference. The high-powered delegation, including the Reserve Bank Governor Lesetja Kganyago and Finance Minister Tito Mboweni, talking up the country's prospects and opportunities for growth. The South Africa Tomorrow Investor Conference, held yesterday and today, hosted virtually by the Johannesburg Stock Exchange, CITI Group and ABSA Bank. Joining us now is Valdene Reddy, JSE Director of Capital Markets. Ms. Reddy, thank you for being with us. How did it all go?
Good evening. Thanks for having me on your show. It was an amazing conference, as you've mentioned, really high caliber delegation in terms of selling the investment case for South Africa. And this was our first SA Tomorrow conference that actually spanned an expanded region. We have done 8 investor conferences, 8 SA Tomorrow conferences with a US market focus. And this year we've extended this specific conference to the UK, the Middle East, as well as some of the Asian markets, which included Singapore and Hong Kong. So we're really excited that we got to expand the reach. We had an amazing turnout for the conference. So as mentioned yesterday, we had an opening address by the President, followed by the Minister of Finance, who gave a delivery, as well as the SABC Governor, Lesetja Kganyago. So really credible speakers and selling, from top down, the political landscape, the fiscal changes, as well as the macro picture to build the investment case. We were also joined by top corporates in South Africa. And all in all, yesterday at our peak, we had almost 245 participants join the panel, and of which we had 187 registered investors across various geographic regions, including South Africa. So it was really quite outstanding to have this type of conference and to have such good turnout across the 2 days. Today, we also had the Minister of Public Enterprises, Pravin Gordhan, followed by a conversation, a fireside chat with the Eskom CEO, Andre de Ruyter, and as mentioned, various panels spanning from an ESG topic, consumer recovery, where we had different South African corporate CEOs. We even did a segment on the potential of South Africa for a hydrogen economy. So really good caliber content. And I think as such, we saw that evidenced with the great turnout and interest that this conference drew.
I understand that it's mainly around the recovery plan. Can South Africa, I mean, you're talking about very high level articulate guests, but how easy is it for them to articulate a recovery plan? We've got unemployment above 63%. If you look at young people who are the future, government saying there's no money in the coffers for anything in the first place. How easy is it to inspire people to come and put their money here?
Yeah, I think it's a very sobering perspective, and it would be quite naive of us to ignore the headwinds, as you've cited, and there's many of them, whether it's our fiscal debt challenges or, as you highlighted, unemployment. But I think what would bode well is that we've come through a really rough 3 to 4 years in some of these big flighted topics that have not had any movement. And maybe as a positive is that post-COVID, we've seen a much faster pace of change, and some of the turnarounds coming in much weighted and long anticipated reforms. So while there are massive areas, like you mentioned, unemployment, that still need to be addressed, we chose to focus on the positives. And it worked really well that last week we came out with some really strong moves by government in opening up our market and leading in moves that would be very complementary and supportive to an economic recovery. So really aspects such as, the moves that they made last week in terms of the energy consumption and opening that up, as well as the plans with SAA. And some of the plans in terms of opening up our energy market from an SOE perspective. And even in how these strong and bold and brave moves that have been happening in terms of curbing corruption. So while we haven't solved all our problems, I think the positive sentiments, especially for international investors, is to see see some of these long-awaited challenges now being tackled with very practical and pragmatic approaches. And I think that's what they want to see, is action and us moving on some of these key items.
Yeah. Well, should that inspire government? I've heard that there is a lot of excitement around the announcement that beyond the municipalities, now companies can generate their own power. Government sort of saying, let's open up the grid further, but it took a long time.
Yeah, so the president did open up with his plans, and I obviously focused a lot on Operation Vulindlela, and that was followed through with some of the political reforms and opening up of the market and what's needed by the finance minister and then the reserve governor and then obviously Minister Gordhan. So it was really key topics. Like I said, I don't think that all the issues would be addressed, but it does show positive moves and momentum in what was announced last week and what was reiterated at the conference over the past 2 days. We obviously have to face still the challenges of COVID that we're in. So we had a panel focusing on the vaccine rollout, some of the headwinds and some of the opportunities and challenges. So there is a lot to get through, but I think the fact that there is some dramatic and positive change shows that we're ripe to embracing what is needed for an economic recovery. And this conference was then very important to instill that type of confidence into an international investor base, a diverse investor base, give the opportunity for participants to engage with these key speakers, corporate CEOs, as well as members of government and ministers, just to engage with them and really, have them make the time to build this investment case. So these are the foundational building blocks, but I think where you have public and private sector collaboration come together, as was evidenced with this conference, it's really, really key imperatives to help change the narrative and to try and get some interest into our country.
Very quickly, in less than a minute, please. You deal with hot money at the JSE, money coming in and out of the country, but we want those big deals, people coming here, creating companies, creating jobs. Are these the people who can advise those sort of companies? What's the reach here in terms of participation?
So South Africa is blessed with really deep and liquid markets, and so the hot money you speak about also speaks to the fluidity of our markets, and we have very high caliber corporates, as has been evidenced for many, many decades in our market. So we do want activity in our market, and like you say, it spanned from investment into our listed space, into some of those faster markets, as well as building the narrative around FDI investment. I mean, infrastructure is a key pillar for economic recovery. And part of this conference was also to focus on the opportunities for direct investment, which will then lead to employment and job creation and growth for South Africa. So I think it was a good balance of both aspects. What are the liquid and high caliber investments that can be made to date, as well as the long-term FDI opportunities that investors can make. So it would be a good balance of both.
All right. Thank you very much, Valdene Reddy, JSE Director of Capital Markets.